The Delta plane crash in Toronto left multiple passengers injured, but miraculously no fatalities. Delta has since offered $30,000 in compensation to each passenger. The Boeing 737 shrieked as it touched down. This was metal scraping against concrete, a discordant symphony of disaster. Passengers aboard Delta Connection Flight 4819 braced themselves, their screams swallowed by the cacophony. What began as a routine flight from Minneapolis to Toronto ended in a horrifying spectacle on runway 23L at Toronto Pearson International Airport. The date was February 17, 2025. Winter had bared its teeth, blanketing Toronto with over 20 inches of snow in the preceding days. The wind, a relentless force gusting up to 40 miles per hour, whipped the fallen snow into a blinding frenzy. On that fateful afternoon, Flight 4819, operated by SkyWest Airlines for Delta Connection, found itself battling against nature's fury. The Bombardier CRJ-900LR, carrying 76 souls and 4 crew members, was moments away from reaching its destination. Yet, in a heartbeat, routine turned into chaos. As the plane descended through the turbulent air, the elements seemed to conspire against it. The wind howled, its icy breath buffeting the aircraft, attempting to shove it off course. Inside the cabin, the mood was tense. Passengers gripped their armrests, knuckles white with fear. The crash resulted in multiple injuries, but miraculously, no fatalities. Delta has since offered $30,000 in compensation to each passenger. From Minneapolis to mayhem, tracing the flight's path. Flight 4819 embarked on its journey from the bustling Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, a city accustomed to winter's icy grip. The flight took off without a hitch, the Bombardier CRJ-900LR soaring into the sky, leaving behind the snow-dusted landscape of Minnesota. Passengers settled in, anticipating a smooth journey. Little did they know that the weather had other plans. As the plane approached Toronto, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, his tone laced with caution. He warned of turbulence and urged passengers to fasten their seatbelts. Meanwhile, on the ground, air traffic controllers at Toronto Pearson International Airport were closely monitoring the approaching storm. Despite the treacherous weather, the pilots of Flight 4819 remained calm and collected. Counting the casualties, a scene of injuries and hope. The impact sent shockwaves through the aircraft. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, dangling like grotesque party favors. In the aftermath, the scene was nothing short of chaotic. Emergency responders, their faces etched with urgency, swarmed the stricken plane. Sirens pierced the air, a grim soundtrack to the unfolding drama. Miraculously, there were no fatalities. However, the crash left 21 passengers injured, some with cuts and bruises, others with more serious injuries. Among the injured were a child, a man in his 60s, and a woman in her 40s, all listed in critical condition. Paramedic Peter Carlson, who was on board the flight, sprang into action, tending to his fellow passengers even as he himself was nursing injuries. His heroism earned him accolades, but for Carlson, it was simply the human thing to do. News of the crash spread like wildfire, igniting a wave of concern and anxiety among the families and friends of those on board. Frantic calls flooded the airlines and hospitals, as loved ones desperately sought information. Response: a flurry of apologies and assistance. In the wake of the crash, Delta Airlines faced a public relations nightmare. Delta CEO Ed Bastian wasted no time in issuing a public statement, expressing his concern and offering support. "We are deeply saddened by this incident," Bastian said, his voice heavy with emotion. He pledged a full investigation into the cause of the crash, vowing to cooperate fully with authorities. Delta, along with SkyWest Airlines, the operator of the flight, swung into action. They provided hotels, meals, and transportation for the stranded passengers, many of whom were shaken and traumatized by the experience. The airlines also worked tirelessly to reunite passengers with their belongings, which were scattered amidst the wreckage. In a move that surprised many, Delta offered each passenger $30,000 in compensation. Section 5. The investigation begins, unraveling the truth behind the crash. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada launched a full-scale investigation. The investigation, assisted by the Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board, focused on several key areas. Investigators started by combing through the wreckage, meticulously documenting every piece of debris. They also downloaded the data from the plane's black boxes, the flight data recorder, and the cockpit voice recorder. Some aviation experts speculated that the plane may not have flared properly during landing, causing it to hit the runway too hard. Others pointed to the gusty winds and the possibility of mechanical issues with the landing gear as contributing factors. Voices from the wreckage, passengers and experts speak out. In the aftermath of the crash, the voices of the passengers and crew members, still raw with shock and disbelief, painted a harrowing picture of the terrifying moments. "It all happened so fast," said one passenger, her voice trembling as she recounted the ordeal. "One minute we were bracing for landing, the next we were sliding down the runway." Another passenger, a businessman on his way home, described the chaotic scene inside the cabin after the impact. "People were screaming, crying, praying," he said. The crew members, hailed as heroes for their calm and professionalism during the evacuation, also shared their experiences. "Our training kicked in," said one flight attendant, her voice filled with emotion. "We knew we had to get everyone off the plane as quickly and safely as possible." Airport in disarray, the aftermath of the crash. The crash of Flight 4819 sent shockwaves through Toronto Pearson International Airport, one of the busiest airports in North America. The incident forced a temporary halt of all flights, grounding planes and stranding passengers. The airport, normally a hub of activity, was eerily quiet as the news of the crash sunk in. Departure and arrival boards displayed a sea of red delayed or cancelled notices. As the airport slowly limped back to normalcy, 2 runways remained closed, impacting operations and causing further delays and cancellations. The crash of Delta Connection Flight 4819 was a sobering event, highlighting the importance of aviation safety and the need for continued vigilance in the skies.